What's up, Lego builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios. I feel like every Mimban update for the past 3 months has had some kind of cool vehicle in it, and this week is no exception. I finally solved my gunship problem. And turns out the trench design was a lot more controversial than I thought it would be. I guess people have strong feelings about holes in the ground. So I'm going over that as well as adding in some new sections. I also hope to reach an important milestone with the base, finishing the entire floor, with the help of a Lego haul containing some long-awaited, very hard to find pieces. Should be an action-packed episode, so don't forget to execute Order 66 on that like button, and let's get building. Amidst the sea of reddish brown and gray are some interesting pieces in this month's haul. As a MOC series nears the end, I have to start seeking out more specialty pieces needed to finish various parts of the build. I got the last 2 yellow girder pieces needed for the sidewall of the base, and got a bunch more stem pieces for the burnt out forest I keep talking about starting. This bag contains just one order, and I specifically bought from this store just because they had one piece. This dark orange 3x3 wedge plate. They have been next to impossible to source, but I finally found them in a decent quantity. I did get some interesting minifig accessories as well, starting with this sand blue plate carrier. These aren't for Mimban, but a side project I've got going on. I'm building a squad of private security droids. These plate carriers work great, and I'm really happy with how they're looking. I also got this very expensive troll breastplate. This cost as much as a Little Caesars pepperoni pizza, but it's worth it because it's the perfect armor piece for my custom alien warrior monks. This last piece has been another tricky one to find, the 1x4 hazard strip tile. I finally have enough to finish tiling off the repair bay. In fact, I now have all the parts I need to finish that whole area this week. Before I get to that, however, I have a progress update. Remember all that reddish brown plate I put under the landing pad forever ago? Well, I finally got around to pulling it up last week on a live stream, and I'm very happy to report not a single piece was broken and the pad is back in place. Now I can get back to work and tile off this area, which is going to look so much better. Also, making sure to add some variation to the terrain with wedge plate. This section is all hidden under the landing pad, so I don't need to worry about its appearance too much, but I do want to keep a somewhat consistent look throughout the entire base compound. Plus, it's a series of little details that when put together help a build really stand out. Side note, I love adding these little patches of plants. They're the perfect little splash of texture, and the olive green goes with the colors on the ground like Sith, Apprentices, and Betrayal. I've slowly been building up all the parts I need to finish the repair bay. It's a very random assortment of rails, grills, tiles, and girder pieces, but I'm really excited to get everything in place so I can finally see if this looks good or not. I've got some varying shades of dirt colored grills, so it looks like something was recently sprayed down over here and the mud and water is still draining out. I'll probably have some brown tile in between where the crane sits as well, but I need to set up the ATDT and figure out what I want the scene to look like before I can add the rest of the mud. This is some of my favorite kind of building, finish work. It's always so satisfying to add a couple pieces here and there and tinker around until you get to step back and admire a finished product. I'm so close to finishing the base floor, I might as well lock in and tile off this last corner. I do need to fill it with accessory builds later, so drop some comments below with what I should put over here. The 2 biggest critiques I got on the trench were it's too tall and too wide, and I'm going to fix one of those things. I originally made the trench this deep because the floor lined up with the black frame perfectly, but I wasn't really thinking about practicality. There isn't a reason for the trench to be so deep, and I'm not building the Grand Canyon over here, so I'm going to raise it up. That's one of the benefits to having everything built in a modular way. I can easily remove the wall and pull up the floor without doing any damage. My plan is to raise everything 1 brick and see how that looks. I put the walls back in to see where they sit, and that still wasn't high enough, so I added 1 more layer of brick, and it looks like 3 is going to be the perfect number. That means I need to shave off 2 studs from the sidewall panels so they still stop at the right spot, and you can see that significantly shortened the trench. Now that the layout is locked in place, I can start building the next section. The panels are an odd number in height, which makes them kind of a pain to build, but I'm hoping to get 4 more done this week to really extend on what I already have in place. It's also time to start adding mud detailing. Most of it will be along the bottom where stuff is kicked or splashed up by people walking by. I want to match what I have on the walls with the trench floor so everything lines up right, and not gonna lie, I'm having a lot more fun with the mud splatters than I thought I would. It can be overwhelming to think about doing the mud detailing because there are so many places and shapes I can build, but I found starting with a couple basic spots like at the base of a wall or in a corner can help get me in the right mindset, and I can keep building on what I've started and get more and more complex. Having worked in the mud for many years also helps me know how it splatters and where it tends to hit, and how to track mud around on the job site. If there was a gold medal for walking around in muddy boots, I'd be looking like Michael Phelps right now. Once the new panels and floor are done, I can put all the sections back and reassemble the trench, hopefully permanently this time. After 10 building weeks, the base floor is finally complete and it looks really good. I didn't have a clear vision of what I wanted the base interior to look like going into this series, so it's reassuring to see I was able to come up with a good layout on a week-to-week basis. It makes me feel more confident to start a project even if I don't have a clear idea of what it'll look like right away. I know things will come to me as I build. The maintenance bay is definitely my favorite part. The muddy grates and hazard strips give it a sense of realism, and the gantry crane holding the turret of an AT-DT makes for some really cool cinematic shots. Now I can crowd this area with more crates, boxes, and tools, whatever the mechanics need to keep the Imperial war effort moving forward on Mimban. I've come to terms with keeping this side empty as well. First, I felt like the whole thing needed to be packed to the gills with detail, but having a large open area for vehicles to wait their turn to be worked on just makes sense. Now I can turn my full attention to this wall and starting the roof. The trench looks much better now. At first I was stubborn and refused to believe it was too deep, but the more I looked at it, the more I saw it. You want your trench deep enough to protect troops, but you don't want them having to climb up a 13-foot wall to engage the enemy. At a certain point, you're just digging an unnecessarily deep hole. Plus, these shallower walls used up less light bluish gray pieces, which is nice. This size gives people plenty of space to walk past each other, and this is a defensive trench, so there's no need to make it super narrow or cramped. I would like to add a couple officers' quarters or briefing rooms at some point along the trench walls. The mud detailing looks great, and as the weeks go on, I'll continue to add more. Unfortunately, I used way more pieces on the walls than I thought I would, like all the pieces I bought for this month. So no more trench progress for a bit, but that's probably a good thing because that'll give me time to figure out the transition from trench to terrain and build up around it, as well as start building the machine gun nests and barbed wire patches that'll guard the front lines. Also, drop some comments down below with a mock idea I could do with these security droids. I'm itching to use them in a build, and I don't even care if it's Star Wars or not. Before I get to the exciting vehicle build, I want to return to the base compound, since people need a way to get from the landing pad to the base, so I'm going to finish laying out the walkway. I have it running up to the storage silo, so I'm just going to have another path tee off from that over to the base entrance. This is also why I switched the computer over to this side of the base, since that's where most people will be coming in. This section will be a little unique though, since it lies right in the path of the Juggernaut and other vehicles, acting like a giant speed bump. So I'm going to build hazard strips out of cheese slopes on either side so the drivers can see the bump and slow down so they don't accidentally catch some air on their way out of the base. The black and yellow strips also provide some nice world building and color contrast that I'm always droning about in these updates. The corners of the walkways were a little tricky, but I eventually landed on this option of putting 1x1 plate and quarter tile on each one. Not the smoothest transition, but I can't think of a better way right now. I did wait to tile off this strip where the hazard lines are, since we need to talk about Juggernaut placement before I can do any tiling. I figured I might as well tile off some more of the terrain while I'm over here. Doesn't make for the most exciting of time lapses, but I don't want to fall behind and get to the final weekend building and still have like half the build be devoid of tile. Plus, it's enjoyable and satisfying work getting the dark orange and reddish brown to meld together. You guys know me, I love my outdoor terrain building. I'm really excited about this next build. Earlier this week, I did a video on this incredible alternate build made by Kodianer Bricks on Instagram. He took the pieces from Ahsoka's Jedi Interceptor and built a sweet mini gunship based on this design art by Jay Blencow. As soon as I decided to make the alt build, I knew I had to try making an Imperial version as well. So this is kind of an unintentional collaboration project between 3 different people. It's mostly gonna be a recolor, but there are a few design changes I'll make based on personal preference and piece limitations. If you want to make this alt build yourself, I have the instructions linked in the description of this video. I knew right away the biggest change on this ship was going to be the cockpit. The OG build uses this windscreen piece, which is only available with this printing on it, which includes a very unfortunate logo. I don't want to pull a Lego and display the wrong emblem, especially on an Imperial vehicle, so I checked my windscreen bin and pulled out this beauty. It matches up with the cockpit almost perfectly, and I only need to perform some slight modifications to the ship for it to fit. The only other big change I had to make was building new S-foils for the rear wings. I thought maybe I had some of these in light bluish gray, turns out I don't, and I don't think white would really fit with the overall color scheme, so I just made some brick built ones, which as you'll see in a bit work just fine. The original designer, Jay, based this off of the Republic Gunship and Little Bird helicopter, which is just the type of vehicle I felt this MOC needed. Plus, I feel like this is a better option than the Republic Gunship, because it's not just another recolored Republic vehicle. Oh wait, that's exactly what it is. What I mean is it's a fresh new design that's unfamiliar and opens up new tactics and scenes that weren't possible with the larger Imperial gunship from before. This terrain just keeps getting better. I think I just needed to see it covering a larger portion of the MOC before I could get a feel for how it would look. These walkways contrast with the terrain nicely and help fill up the empty space over here. I'm waiting to tile off of this section though, because where the Juggernaut goes will dictate what color tile I use for it. Originally, I was gonna have the Juggernaut driving out here in the wastelands, but I've scooted the base compound forward so far there isn't much open area left over here, and I still want to add some more half-buried vehicles and craters, which I can't do with a giant tank in the way. If I do have the tank out here, I would have driven over this walkway already and gotten it all muddy, so I'd need to use reddish brown to finish tiling. Another option I could do is have the tank still back in this corridor about to cross the walkway. I could then tile it off like normal, but I feel like this option kind of hides the tank from certain angles, and I wanted to have it more in the middle for all to see and enjoy. Which leads me to the final option, having the Juggernaut in the process of driving over the walkway. It's not hidden in the back of the base, but it's also not taking up space in the wasteland, so I feel like it's the best of both worlds. And it wouldn't really matter what color tile I use here since you can't really see the walkway. But I want to know your thoughts in the comments, so let me know which of these Juggernaut placement options you like best. The dropship is a thing of beauty. I've already raved about it in the alternate build video, but I do have some thoughts on this Imperial version. Unfortunately, I had to downgrade it a little because of piece limitations, namely in the cockpit area and rear S-foils. But this was the best windscreen piece I could find, and I'm lucky it fits the shape of the build so well because I had no idea how I was going to make this one work. It's not airtight, however, so the pilot better dress warmly. The rear S-foils don't fold, but that's just a play feature which doesn't affect the design, and these smaller foils don't get in the way of the cannon as much. All in all, I think this was a successful transformation and finally scratches my itch to have some kind of dropship in the MOC. I could have this being worked on in the base, or cruising around the wastelands picking off rebel war parties with its menacing side cannon. The progress in this update was a bit of a surprise for me considering I had no knowledge of the dropship design until last Sunday night. But I'm really happy to have another ship from Mimban. I was feeling like I needed to better represent the Imperial's air superiority in this MOC. It's nice to have so much of the trench in as well, because now I can figure out what the rest of the terrain's gonna look like around it and get to work on those machine gun nests. And I know it might not look like it, but this MOC is getting really close to being done. The last big thing I need to figure out is how I'm gonna cap off and light the base, and hopefully I can get started on that next week. But that's a wrap for week 10. Don't forget to let me know what you think of the MOC down below in the comments, and until next time, happy building.